I'm Tim Kitzrow, and here to bring home the bacon are Big Ryan the Fat Guy.
I'm sick as a dog. What's up, YouTube? It's the NFL Picks Against the Spread for Week 17, 22-23 NFL season. Fat Guy, we are 116, 115, and 9. One game above 500, which is not acceptable for us, but we don't care. On to the Dallas Cowboys at the Tennessee Titans. Titans plus 10.5 at home. 27% of early bettors are on the Titans. Fat Guy, who you got?
Well, he came out like a cannon. Spitfire, real fast for Big Rye, much like a lot of things in his life. That being said, I guess this is it's not like I don't love this game. We're gonna take Tennessee. We're gonna take plus 10.5, probably because this might settle at 9.5. It might settle at 10. Like I think there's more likely to get closing line value. I don't think that value will outrun the juice though. I don't think this is really a bettable game, except for there's one exception. Tennessee's road to the playoffs is literally a win or lose against Jacksonville on the road in week 18. So I'm curious, like do you kind of just take your foot off the gas a little bit? Like, why would you risk Derrick Henry in a game like this? A couple of players on D. Anyone who's banged up, why? Like, what would be the point here? Like, I don't see the benefit in winning this. Maybe there is some. I don't have the seeds in front of me, but maybe there's some like seeding possibility that could tilt in Tennessee's favor. But like, you're still a pretty big dog to win this game, no matter who's playing, even if it's your winning 11. I know it's more of a soccer term, but that being said, we're going to take Tennessee. But if you want to be savvy, I don't think there's a way of betting on either side and winning long term. Like, I always do that, with the hands and the distribution. But I think that the juice is going to accompany like too much of the median. So I don't think you can make a positive bet either side in real life, especially in like a rec book where it's like minus 110 per side. Like I don't see how you can make money long term unless there was some tip off that Tennessee might be a little bit light on the roster on purpose. So here's a funny thing. Me and Big Rye used to do this in the old days, is we would sign up for an NFL media pass, which is oddly enough very easy to get, and they would release rosters an hour and a half before the game started. I mean, on Twitter, someone will break it, and you could probably see a line movement like at like 8:15 Pacific time in the morning. So hour and 45 minutes beforehand, that might give you an idea, and you could chase the steam there, which means if it starts shifting in Dallas's favor, you could bet on Dallas and probably actually get some value. But other than that, this is going to be a contest pick plus 10.5, and unless Tennessee sits anyone, I think this is a book wins on both sides type of game.
Yeah, I remember that happening with I believe it was the New York Giants like 6 or 7 years ago, and surprisingly they won every game where they actually sat their guys. So it's just that game is really a crapshoot, even at that 10.5. And Tennessee plus 10.5 is minus 118 right now. That's crazy juice if you were to take Tennessee. Either way, on to the next game, Fat Guy. On to the Sunday games. Cleveland Browns at the Washington Football Commanders. Commanders minus 2.5 at home. 47% of early bettors are on the Commanders. Fat Guy, who you got?
This is again a contest pick. It's going to be Cleveland. There is something interesting though, like like Deshaun Watson. Like I don't even know if he's added. He could be worse in terms like of win probability added when compared to Jacoby Brissett. But then again, is that like a ring rust type thing? You know what I mean? Like, will that improve? And it's hard to like the priors, the previous games. Everyone uses like the statistical terms seem to worm their way into like common parlance. Like it's prior shouldn't be the word. It should be like, I don't know, like previous history, I guess. I don't know. I guess maybe it is the word. The priors are usually set for each team. Everything's pretty, you know what you're getting, right? But with Cleveland, you kind of don't, and we're kind of all waiting for like a vintage Deshaun Watson performance, and it's yet to happen. He hasn't been very good, like extremely underwhelming. Underwhelming in preseason. I don't know about practice. I'm not Mary Kay Cabot, or they call it Cabot. We're Canadian. There you go. Cabot, Cabot, what have you. Anyway you slice it, though, he's been underwhelming, and I'm curious, like, when eventually he'll have a good performance, but when he does, Like, will that shift the market's perspective on Cleveland's chances? I don't really know. Or maybe he's just really like underrunning performance, and perhaps that is leading to Cleveland getting exponentially good value. Because think about it, if Cleveland had a, you know, 2020, 2019 Deshaun Watson, Houston Texans type caliber quarterback, like what would this line be? Cleveland minus 3.5. Like I honestly think so. Does that sound too crazy? I don't think so. So this line is established on a pretty low sample of bad Deshaun Watson performances. So I really do think like when it's at equilibrium for a low ceiling for Watson, that kind of offers value for Cleveland. This is a tricky number at plus 2.5. I'm always trying to look for ways. I think there's a possibility, even though the over round, the juice is a little bit higher when you reverse tease, when you sell points, there might be a case for something like Cleveland minus 2.5 here. So I'd have to play with the juice, and I'd have to figure out if I think that's positive expected value. And is Cleveland, and also too, this is just a theory I posited, like, is Deshaun Watson performances, those priors, are they being used too strongly to extrapolate these lines, right? Like, and is it just ring rust? Is he even like, is this what we're getting too? That's another thing. So in a long-winded response, Cleveland plus 2.5 for a contest pick.
Deshaun Watson's NEA this year in a limited sample size obviously is 4.37, which puts him below like anyone who has played significant snaps this year. Like it's
including Jacoby Brissett.
Oh yeah, Brissett's around 6, somewhere around there. He's actually had a pretty good season relative to a lot of other quarterbacks using this stat.
Yeah, and I almost think they should have rode with him the whole way.
Yeah, like Deshaun Watson is just slightly under Kenny Pickett. Obviously, it's smaller sample size, but it hasn't been a very impressive start to the season for him. On to the next game, Miami Dolphins at the New England Patriots. The Pats are +1 at home, 41% of early bettors on the Pats. Fat Guy, we've seen lines anywhere from Pats minus 2.5 to Pats +1. What are your feelings on this game?
I think this is the most interesting market of the week. There is some intrigue, I think, on the Detroit Lions Chicago Bears game, and we're obviously going to touch on that when that comes up. But what's the true line? Okay, this is a good one to see for the folks at home, as Norm would say. If Tua doesn't play, what does the line close at? And then compare that to like the fluctuations throughout this week. This is all has to do with speculation on Tua's concussion and whether it's going to affect his playing status or even his play if he does get on the field, right? Like this is like, if you're an amateur bettor, this is where you find your edge is figuring out, and don't just listen to some bum on Twitter. Like have some sort of data set and have an idea to separate the signal and the noise in terms of injuries, because like a lot of if JC Jackson, got hurt during practice for the Chargers, like that's not going to make a big difference, but a quarterback, yes it is. And if you have your ear to the ground and you understand like the win probability gap between one quarter from starting quarterback to backup quarterback for any team, that's going to give you idea of how good the value could be, right? The one thing I will say though is this year they've been doing these like in between lines, because we've been doing this a long time, and generally speaking, a lot of like some books would take a risk putting out a line because they would capture the market, right? Then again, that's a pretty big risk, because if they're putting a number out and nobody else is, that's got to be shaky foundation for information. Now they put out like these like probability of who's playing numbers. That's the best way of putting it, I think, where it's, what I mean? Like this is like a Tua, like this was a flash line on Pinnacle. It's most places like Bet365. It's minus, not really a good place to bet. There are some holes though. They have like New England minus 2.5. So obviously for the contest, we're going to take New England +1 here. But this was a flash line on Pinnacle. But what does this line really mean? Is this like a Tua is 40 to 60% going to play? Like, is that what this is? It's very interesting, like how they're competing for this market space, because it is a lot of dollars, right? But the The only issue is like if you're traders, because I don't know if this is algorithmic. I don't think it'd be. I think this would have to be a manual person doing this, or a group of traders for each book, and the stakes are pretty high if you're wrong. You know what I mean? So, and they have been like the look ahead lines. I have a friend that only bets look ahead lines, and he's beat up the NFL real good this year. Of course, though, the sample's never large enough to, say definitively. Like his ROI looks great, but like he really only bet 100 games, right? Like look ahead lines, maybe 120. So even if you flip a coin randomly in your basement into a 24 can soda cardboard box, you're gonna get a wide array of distributions among heads and tails. So that being said, this is an interesting market. You should see what it is at close if Tua plays and if he doesn't play, and then you can kind of figure out going forward what these we'll call them intermediate lines mean, and where you can pick up value on a book that's perhaps overextending itself, trying to capture some of the market space. For books, because Pinnacle, for instance, Pinnacle doesn't have they rarely keep things on the board. They won't participate in that type of speculation unless I would imagine, I can't say for sure, but if they have a bunch of sharp accounts and they put out a tester line, they'll probably know, right? I mean, maybe that's what they did with this flash line, because Big Rye, how long was this up for that you noticed?
No, it wasn't up long, that's for sure. Like it was down. I put it in, and by the time we started recording, it was down. So it's one of those ones that's it's eerie because no other books have taken it down or changed it.
Yes. So I know this is a lot of speculation on my part. I do have some knowledge about the inner workings of how sportsbook works, but again, it's speculation on how their operations are, and they've also changed over the years. Pinnacle isn't quite the king of the isn't solely occupying the throne necessarily, but like you could put this line out with low limits, and then a sharp betting syndicate or person could get an alert and then auto bet that number. I'm not sure if you can get away with AI betting or like bot betting on Pinnacle, but either way, you could put out a lower limit, like a couple thousand, and then get those people to bet into it, and then use that information to shape the line later on. So that's an idea. This is an interesting line. That being said, my New England +1, if you could get it at this point in time on, what are we on, Tuesday night here, Big Rye? That would probably offer you some really good value. Again, at closing, this is one to look out for, to see what it would be like with a backup starting and what it would be like with Tua starting, and compare that to this midweek line.
Fat Guy, next game is the Arizona Cardinals traveling to Atlanta to take on the Falcons, who are 3.5-point favorites at home. 58% of early bettors are on the Atlanta Falcons. Fat Guy, who you got?
I think this hook is pretty good here. What's the total at, Big Rye, if you have it in front of you?
I'll pull it up as you talk.
Yeah, so as if I couldn't have sorted this out, or I couldn't just
41.
There you go, 41. I think in these types of 41's a little bit higher than some. I like how 41's high than recently. I mean, some of the bad weather. This, of course, is indoors in Atlanta, but like in a 41, I tend to favor the hook, especially in a contest situation, because there's probably, I'm going to say, a 7.5% chance just off the cuff that Atlanta wins by 3. That doesn't mean that 3.5 at -110 is good value. I would bet you that if you get 3.5 at even money, I would recommend that bet. I would say that that's a good bet for Arizona, assuming nothing changes. However, this line's probably closer to equilibrium if you have -110 on both sides. Like, not equilibrium. I don't think the better can win in the long term. So even with a lot of different mechanisms working at backup quarterback for both teams, I still think that Arizona +3.5 at, say, even money would offer some value. And that's what we get in the contest. It's technically even money, right? We're not paying any juice to make a contest selection. So contest pick Arizona Cardinals.
And on to the next game, which is one that is of note to you, but maybe not so much this game. The Jacksonville Jaguars traveling to Houston to take on the Texans, who are 4-point dogs at home. 47% of early bettors On the Texans, fat guy, who you got?
Well, we're going to be taking Jacksonville here. Big Rise alluding to the only NFL future bet I made this year rather, with a friend. So I got plus 800 on Jacksonville to win the decision, which he's already counting as a loss, the pessimist he is. So, well, you laid 8 to my 1. It's going to sting, buddy, if it happens. But, it still has to happen. It hasn't happened yet. Still very much could lose this bet. But that being said, Jacksonville -4. This is an interesting one. It's going to be a contest pick Jacksonville, but the reality of Jacksonville's road to the playoffs is pretty much whether they win or lose against the Titans on week 18. So I'm very curious if does this game really even matter? Could this line be a little bit off? So this is another one, much like the Dallas-Tennessee game on Thursday night, where you could look. I know I said I referenced 10 a.m. It's a Thursday night game. That's not when the Tennessee-Dallas. That's not when that's going to happen. But just look, an hour and a half before kickoff. That's when they release. The the final rosters and the inactives. So for the game, so you're starting 45 or whatever. So there's a bit of market bustle before that, about 15 minutes, because they tend to know, people that are betting high limits tend to know, and that's where you can see the market shift a little bit. So if you see the Jacksonville line coming down, hour and 45 minutes before the game, chances are following that steam is probably a good idea. I mean, this is the other thing too, is you got to remember, these guys are betting this price down, and when you chase steam, when you're chasing sharp action, alleged sharp action, again, it's still a hypothesis. And I'm just sharp action on something like inactives. They might leave meat on the bone. They might not. So the price you get, say they're betting Jacksonville, they're betting Houston +4 all the way to Houston +3 -115. Well, Houston +3 -115 might not offer any value, whereas Houston +4 -108 offered value, right? So you don't want to be like the bag holder where you bet at the very tail end where all of the meat has been plucked off the bone. So again, that takes a little bit of skill in itself. So weird. Following a theoretical sharp action that moves a market, following that price action takes skill, and it does take a little bit, right? A little bit of knowledge. So anyways, another market to look out for, a contest pick Jacksonville -4, but I'm kind of curious to see how serious Jacksonville takes, considering the playoff implications.
And on the flip side of the coin, Houston playing for that first overall pick as well. On to the next game, Indianapolis Colts at the New York Giants. Giants -5 at home. 85% of early bettors are on the Giants, fat guy. Who you got?
When it's in the dead man zone between 3.5 and 5.5, and I tend to take the favorite. I just think that offers I'd rather take money line on Indianapolis, for instance, the comparable money line over say getting that 1.5 above 3.5. Do you know what I mean? So in this case, whenever it's close, which this line really is, we're gonna just take New York here. 6 is kind of where the action comes. The dead zone between 3.5 and 5.5, I think, tends to be more favorable to the favorite. So that's going to be just a numbers game here. But then again, in linear fashion, it's probably better if you like the dog just to take the money line. So in a pure math sense, it's a contest pick. I still think that this is a winner for both sides for the book. It's going to be Giants -5.
Next up, Denver at Kansas City. Kansas City 13.5-point favorites at home. 61% of early bettors are on the Chiefs. Hackett out as coach for Denver. Fat guy, who you got in this divisional matchup?
We're going to take Denver. We're going to take the 13.5 points here. This is another weird thing. This is when you're thinking about markets and closing lines and opening lines for that matter. Do you think this was a 14.5-point game with Hackett as the coach of the Broncos? I honestly think that. I think you could put whatever guy they have in the building that has any sort of experience, and he'll be a better head coach more than likely. And this is another thing too, where I have to commend Denver. They still fired him actually too late, in my opinion. but it's something. And it makes you wonder, how did Hugh Jackson last 2.5 seasons or whatever it was, two and a third? Like how did he last that long in comparison? This one was obvious. You cut bait. This guy was not cut out for this. Or maybe he is at some point, Nathaniel Hackett. I'm not just going to throw in a towel on a guy I don't know. But performance-wise, this was a really, really, really pathetic turnout. I don't need to, use really more than once, but I don't know how else to highlight that he was just an abomination as a head coach. McDaniels might fall into that category as well on his second kick in the can with the Las Vegas Raiders. That being said, contest pick plus 13.5 of the Denver Broncos, leaving the Chiefs an opportunity to win by 2 touchdowns.
Apparently, the Broncos offered the interim head coaching job to the defensive coordinator, Ero Evero, and he turned it down, which is just showing you how things are going.
Hold on. Can we just touch on that? Good for that guy, because I feel like they tend to use your interim coaching like results against you, and I don't think that's fair at all. Like realistically, you're taking hold of a drought, like a sinking ship. Like it's the bar should be to win no games, like from there out. That's what the bar should be. Anything that you do is impressive in my book here. Everything's disorganized. The system is so bad that the guy got fired mid-season. They won't even let him finish the season. So I am impressed. I am very impressed with, I don't even know that guy, like the D coordinator for the Broncos. Good for him. Good job. It's not your job to clean up with 2 games left on the Denver Broncos. I'm impressed with that. I'm impressed with his performance, contrary to what George St. Pierre would say. So good on the D coordinator of the Denver Broncos.
Next up, we got a key divisional matchup here. Carolina at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay -3 at home. 35% of early bettors are on the Buccaneers, fat guy. A majority on the underdog Panthers in this situation on the road. Who you got?
I like the Panthers. I think this is a good number. Tampa Bay, I think everything's kind of priced like there's a chance that, like, because in normal, the start of the season, this should have been like a -7.5 type game. But in reality, Tampa Bay isn't playing that well. And there's a chance Tampa Bay really just isn't that good. Like there's a lot of problems there clearly, and I actually think like they might be outrunning. Like they seem to be winning, some of these really tightly contested games lately, and perhaps like this they're still given the benefit of the doubt. I think this should be a 2.5 point game. I actually think there's value on Carolina, and I think there might even be closing line value on Carolina. Carolina's played pretty well. And good on interim head coach Steve Wilkes. This is, I think Carolina is better than what's being set at, power rankings wise. And I think Tampa Bay is probably a little bit too high. I think this might even have half a point of value off of a key number with a little bit of juice concessions too. So you might actually, I think it's possible that Carolina's a plus 2%. I actually think that's a possibility, assuming you get good juice, like Carolina +3 -108, something like that. So I like Carolina +3.
That guy. Next up, the Chicago Bears travel to Detroit to take on the Lions, who are 6-point favorites at home. 56% of early bettors are on the Lions. Fat guy, who you got?
I like the Lions here. I think that there's some rationale here at this stage in the season. Like, I think you're more likely to see, for lack of a better term, NBA style approaches to some of these games. Like, it's obviously not what the NFL wants, but like, I think you might kid glove. I don't know why it's even in the news, but sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. Like Justin Fields, he plays a very physical game, we could say, at quarterback here. I think if he takes any sort of damage, I could see him getting pulled, just precautionary. So, when in doubt, like when you're in a coin flip situation, I'm going to take the side that doesn't have like, obviously this is a complete hypothesis and theory on my part, but I'm going to take the side that's not doesn't have like a disaster contingency plan possibly. So I do think that there's something interesting here. And I do think that they might, like that's still, like, Justin Fields is possibly a really strong talent. Like, why are you burning, in-game experience is great, but like, you know what I mean? If you do take any sort of knock, I don't think you want to risk getting hurt. Like an ACL, think of it. Kyler Murray tearing his ACL is going to hurt next season. Justin Fields hurting himself like an ACL would hurt yourself next season. You know what I mean? And he's the type of guy where he's not going to be able to do it just standing there in the pocket, right? It's not, the rebound is like, it's career threatening, right? And that means franchise threatening too. So I could see the kid gloves on a little bit for the Bears. And that might be something to monitor too, because I do think the league is shifting to that direction a little bit, especially in these, for lack of a better term, mean nothing games. So I'm going to take the Lions here. And I think it's possibly because of a harebrained idea I have about the treatment of Justin Fields, perhaps in this mean nothing game.
The last early game on Sunday, New Orleans Saints traveling to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles, who are 6.5-point favorites at home. 72% of early bettors are on the Eagles. Fat Guy, who you got?
I like the Eagles. I think they're going to close at 7. I think this is going to offer, some value. I'm not sure how heavy the juice is across the board, but you don't want to pay substantial juice. You don't, but
minus
some is
116.
Okay. See, that's too high, but I am seeing other ones. There's minus 106 I'm looking at right now. I don't want to give it a plug here, but that I would say offers value. Minus 6.5, minus 106. There's a lot of books at 7 now as well. So like line shopping, you could be a bad sports bettor, but if you just pick the best line across the board, you could make money. So, and this would be one of those cases, I think, or at least break even. So we're going to take the Eagles, we're going to take 6.5, and we're going to put our line shopping to use.
On to the afternoon or midday game. San Francisco at the Las Vegas Raiders, who are 5.5-point dogs at home. 31% of early bettors on the Raiders. Fat Guy, who you got?
We're going to take the San Francisco 49ers. We're going to lay the 5.5, and I'm going to go back to my theory I've explained earlier. In that dead zone between 3.5 and 5.5, much like the New York Giants, I'm most likely going to take the favorite, and I think it offers a better realization of value, or better or a smaller realization of losses if this is indeed at equilibrium. I like the Niners at 5.5, but only in a contest situation. Niners minus 5.5.
Fat Guy, next up, the Jets travel to Seattle to take on the Seahawks, who are 2.5-point dogs at home. 43% of early bettors are on Seattle. Fat Guy, who you got?
I find this line really strange. I actually think this line should be Seattle minus 1.5. So there's something I'm missing, I'm sure, here. But again, this is like rather than handicapping it using X's and O's, I think that this could close at Seattle all the way up to 2.5. It's one of those games that's going to, I think, stay in the 2.5 window, barring any sort of, breaking injury news. But I think this could close all the way up to Seattle minus 2.5, and this offers closing line value. So, and Seattle at plus money might even be just the best bet to go. So this might be a Hawks bet in real life, but it certainly is in the contest. Seattle plus 2.5.
Fat Guy, next up, the Minnesota Vikings traveling to Green Bay to take on the Packers, who are 3.5-point favorites at home. 57% of early bettors are on the Packers. A little bit of nostalgia, I feel like, with this line.
It's one of those, but you and I are a little bit surprised that it's not 3. This seems like a classic 3, does it not? Yep. So, I mean, there's 3 with like the juice equivalent of 3.5 available across the board, just as I look over at my other monitor. But I think here you got to take Minnesota in the hook in a juiceless contest. Like Minnesota plus 3 at technically plus 100 or minus 100, depending on how you want to write that down. Or what is it, 2.0 if we're doing decimal odds? 1-to-1 fractional. So we're going to take Minnesota here. We're going to take the hook here. And I think more than likely it does close across the board. Green Bay minus 3, minus 118 would be my guess. So if we can get good juice on Minnesota plus 3 or plus 3.5, like maybe minus 104, minus 106. I don't see that available, but you know what I mean? That doesn't mean I have every option. Like I'm just looking at, maybe 8 books. You guys all have access to different people. Also too, some books like to mitigate their risk. So perhaps if you're in Green Bay, you might get a really good, you're in Wisconsin, you might get a really good price being the villain in the town and betting on Minnesota with your local bookies. So all of those options are always on the table. That's why I like talking about pricing, even unrealistic pricing, because it's, what what I'm able to see might not be unrealistic for somebody else. So if I can help someone at least get a little bit of value, then I'm going to do so. So Minnesota at a good juice plus 3.5 would be good in real life. That being said, in the contest at plus 100, 3.5, it's a good number. Minnesota plus 3.5.
Fat guy, next up, the LA Rams travel to, well, they don't travel very far because they're going to play in the exact same stadium they play in all the time. But they are playing the Chargers, who are 6.5-point favorites in LA. 46% of early bettors on the Chargers. Fat guy, who you got in this game?
I like the Rams, and I think I don't know if I'm actually going to bet it, but I am leaning towards the idea that this could close at LAC minus 5.5, like over a key number of 6, and that would offer some value if that happened. But then again, here's the thing: when you bet in early, this is midweek now. We had Christmas, guys. We have families, believe it or not. Maybe less so the guy that's living in a Buffalo Bills basement over my colleague to the right or left, depending on what you're looking at. That being said, midweek line, there might be some value at 6.5. It's harder to get shifts from this stage, but I think this could close at 5.5. But then again, don't that's still a gamble. Like, you're betting on betting too. When I make a prognostication about a line shift and attaining value, you could lose. It could go the other way. There could be news that I don't know, but I'm just saying my idea is that it could go to LAC minus 5.5, and more often than not, I'm usually right in these spots, and I think there is a small chance of that happening. But again, I'm probably not going to bet in real life on this line. That being said, contest pick Rams plus 6.5.
And on to the flex Sunday night football game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. And like classic AFC North, the home team gets 3 points. 26% of early bettors are on the Ravens, 74% on the road Steelers. And I believe the Steelers minus 110 at plus 3. So slight edge here towards the Steelers. Who you got?
Sure. Think about this. Over the years, just take all of these matchups that are at 3, put them in at, even minus 106 odds. Put a random, or a random number generator in Google Sheets, get them to pick the sides. You're going to find one winner in 1,000 over the last 20 years. Probably. This is probably at equilibrium. I think the book wins regardless over the long term, regardless of what side you buy. I don't have an opinion at this other than that the juice is favoring the Steelers. We are running a juiceless contest. Steelers plus 3. It should be an interesting game to watch in any regard.
And then, Fat Guy, onto the Monday night game. This is actually
the
barn quite the game. Absolutely. 5-star entertainment here between the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals, a underdog at home here, plus 1. 57% of early bettors are on the Cincinnati Bengals. Fat Guy, who you got?
I got a tin of popcorn. That's probably the best way to attack this game, is just to watch it. We're going to take Cincinnati in the contest, plus 1, despite my Buffalo Bills toque. And it is a toque. It's not a beanie. I just want to watch this game as a fan of football that has been really grating as of late. I haven't quite found the joy that I once did. But this one I would be interested in seeing. I want to see the coaching strategies when it comes down to it, because I want to see how these teams operate when they're playing other teams of the same caliber. I'd like to see how that works. So we're going to take Cincinnati. We're going to take the 1 point. And we're going to just be watching for entertainment purposes only.
Lightning round, Fat Guy. Dallas at Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Cleveland at Washington.
Cleveland.
Miami at New England.
New England.
Arizona at Atlanta.
Arizona.
Jacksonville at Houston.
Jacksonville.
Colts at the Giants.
Big Blue.
Denver at Kansas City.
Denver.
Carolina at Tampa Bay.
I like Carolina.
Chicago at Detroit.
Interesting, Detroit.
New Orleans at Philly.
I like Philly.
The 49ers at the Las Vegas Raiders.
Niners.
Jets at Seahawks.
Seahawks.
Vikings Packers.
Vikings.
Rams Chargers.
Rams.
Steelers at the Baltimore Ravens.
Steelers.
and Buffalo at Cincinnati.
Bengals.
And congratulations to Lando for winning Week 16, 8-6-2. It was very, very tight this week, and Lando was not the only one here at 8-6-2. We also had E-Steelers, Detroit's Kneecaps, Jimmy G, and the Super Friends Starfire, as well as Untouchable Jay, who thought that he won originally. But it goes to Lando. He had the OU of 41, which was the closest to the 20 or 23 for the Monday night game.
Billy D. Williams, the Monday night game.
Congratulations to Lando for going 8-6-2 this week. Very close, 57%. I think that might be one of the lower bars set in the BRFG weekly contest. So this week was not an easy week for anybody. And we can see that because the gap between CEO Eric Hayden and Untouchable Jay, Wook Dog, and Detroit's Kneecaps is kind of closed up here. CEO Eric Hayden was above 60% for a good portion of the season. But he's come back down to real life with the rest of us here, but still has that nice, cushy 2-game lead with 2 weeks left. So good luck to you, CEO Eric Hayden. I know Untouchable Jay and Wook Dog, both fearsome competitors when it comes down to the picks contest.
The Busman has a uncalculated week, so that might need to be investigated. You might be on the bad end of that, but that's a possibility there as well.
Fat Guy, onto the JS705 Name of the Week honorable mentions.
Fat Guy, be my Santa. I need to go 16-0 this week. Well, I do have this certain body type of him. How do you make it down all those chimneys? And what if you don't have a chimney? Very few people do. Interesting theory. Conspiracy theory. Tinfoil too. Norbit Hyde. Merry ho-hum, Fat Guy. Thank you. Big Roy got stuck in my chimney. Merry Christmas, BRNFG. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry
These
Christmas.
They're nice ones. They're very nice. I like them. Santa stole my parlay. Mean. He's got to pay for everything somehow. Big Rye weather in the dirty south. Love it. I'll be behind the couch.
This is the JS715 Name of the Week. Whoa, kaboom!
And the JS715 Name of the Week. Big Rye's a real jerk. It's nice to catch shade from my co-host here. It's usually my name in the the headlines. It's nice to push it to the back page. You know what I mean?
Yeah, pushing it to the back is my specialty. Thank you to our channel members, especially Stuart Johnson, who is just recently joined. So we appreciate the support, guys. Thank you for helping us out and supporting this channel. Fat Guy, not only you, but everyone else has to remember to make your picks against the spread for Week 17. You can find that at BigRyanTheFatGuy.com or below in the descriptions. Fat Guy, we got Week 17 in the books. Before the video, we were both going, what are we going to talk about this week? And then obviously we go long. So is there anything else you want to add on?
It's always my fault. It's always my fault. Well, if you're doing this and you're trying to figure out where your skills align, I've been hyping this all year, and probably during COVID, the pandemic, or whatever word you want to use to describe that time and place. Figuring out who's playing and who isn't at key positions, that's it's not rocket science, but there is value in understanding how to separate the signal and the noise, and I would imagine that would take some sort of social media mastery. Again, that's just an idea for me. That's something that Big Ryan and I have. No skills would be, I think, better than what we have, because I'm pretty sure that we would only be able to parse into noise over signal, so we don't even really operate on that level. There are other options and there are tools, but the accuracy of those tools will never be as strong as someone who is finally crafting their own skills. That's what you kind of notice. There's a lot of I guess as an aside here, there's a lot of betting products for, oddly enough, Big Ryan and I have had a lot of ideas, but not the budget or the gumption to complete some of these competing ideas. There's a lot of betting products out there, but what I've realized from purchasing a lot of them, just out of pure curiosity, is that the best way to do it, because there are a lot of them are underwhelming, by the way. The best way to beat any market or understand any concept is to just go as deep as you can yourself. Think about this: if you're always a price taker, there's always a chance that you're going to be on the bad end of something. When you're a price maker, when you understand, when you have that rarefied skill, is rarefied even a word? Then you have a chance to really benefit from it. And it doesn't have to be just from betting. The knowledge you'll gain on its own will have, probability knowledge will have far-reaching benefits. So, anyways, find your niche, amateurs, and get good at it. Good luck this week, and Happy New Year.